I'll do it.
Is this thing on? We've got the Hoka Zinal 2 conversational pace shoe review. It's funny, I was thinking right before we hit the record button, why is Hoka so bad at the first generations of their shoe being garbage, but then their second generations being awesome?
What else comes to mind? Talk about the
Speed
history there.
Speed Goat. Like Speed Goat 1, terrible shoe. One of the worst shoes ever
Why?
made ever.
Why?
You couldn't even stand up without snapping your ankle. Like it was like the shoe had it had like a medial stack of like 50 and a lateral stack of like 10. It only had four eyelets for lacing, and the upper exploded after about 100 miles. So that's one. And then all of a sudden they make Speedgoat 2, which is that's still in my opinion the best Speedgoat of all time. Challenger ATR. The first one, a lot of people loved it because it was so light and so minimal, but
I loved it.
the upper was so voluminous, I couldn't even tie the shoe tight. The eyelets would completely touch. Challenger 2, one of my favorite shoes of all time. Hoka Zinal. First version, just a dumpster fire. Like the thing was like slappy flippers, like so bad. Zinal 2, well, as of right now, greatest Zinal of all time.
I feel like Hoka's tagline should be "Everyone deserves a second chance."
Yeah. I mean, I just figured after the first Zinal that shoe would get canned, and they would just make something else.
Yeah.
I'm really glad they didn't, and they kept working on it.
It's kind of funny that we got this Zinal like a week after what I'm about to tell you, because you and I were in Flagstaff in like early May, and we were watching this like Flagstaff promo video, and Eric Sensman's like running Buffalo Park in a pair of the Zinal ones. And I was like, what is that shoe? And you're like, the shittiest Hoka ever made. And then like a week later, this like comes into our mailbox.
I know. It's like, just when I thought you couldn't get any dumber, you go and do this and totally redeem yourself. That's how I feel about the Hoka Zinal in a Spark Notes conversational pace shoe episode. Before we dive deep into it, though, these shoes were provided to us by Hoka and Running Warehouse. We're under no financial obligation to say whether we like a product or not, because we want to keep these reviews authentic, beneficial for you. No one will get to preview or watch this footage before it gets published to YouTube. Yeah, the Hoka Zinal 2, really the only thing it has in common with the originals and all is the name. Like the intentions for the shoe were the same, but this shoe is completely different and actually does what I think Hoka's designers wanted the originals and all to do. Some quick stats. It's $160. And this pair, I think it dropped over an ounce, maybe an ounce and a half over the originals and all. So Hoka's website, or at least their tech sheet that I got from the rep, showed a size 10 weighing in at 8 ounces on the dot. I don't think my coffee scale is that inaccurate, but like my with dirt weight after running in the shoe, I got 7.8 ounces. Like this is like by far the lightest weight shoe we've ever had on the channel. And I think this is the lightest weight trail shoe Hoka has ever made.
And the lightest shoe that we've reviewed to date, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's probably the lightest shoe by about an ounce and a half. And I don't care about weight that much, but like when you're getting into that sub 8 ounce territory, they're like suspiciously light.
What concerns do you have about a shoe when you dip into this weight category? Like what changes for you? What do you start to care about the most?
I mean, the two concerns that always come to mind are protection underfoot and durability. Because usually there's sacrifices in those departments. So like, when you start saving weight, we make the materials thinner. When do they rip? When do they wear out? And then when you're shrinking the amount of foam under the midsole, like how much rock protection are we getting underfoot? So like those are sacrifices that you make when you get a lighter weight shoe.
And that's how you're going to judge this shoe on those two categories.
That's what had me the most skeptical about the weight of the shoe, was like, where did Hoka cut corners to get the weight this low? Because like really the only other like big name shoe within like shouting distance of this Zinal is like the Solomon like S Lab Pulsar and Pulsar SG. Like I would say that those are like that's like the title fight right now. Is those two shoes. because there's a lot of design elements that parallel each other, the Pulsar and this Zinal. So this one is 25 millimeters in the forefoot, 30 in the heel. The old Zinal was 27 in the forefoot, 32 in the heel. So this one actually dropped 2 millimeters in terms of the total stack height, which if I had not known that and this was like a blind test, I would have said the opposite because I feel like the cushioning got better despite losing 2 millimeters of foam. And that just goes to show like the type of foam that you use matters.
But that's where they cut corners, right? Like by taking all that stuff out of the midsole, that's probably where they cut the most weight.
I bet they saved a little bit of weight with the foam because like the old Zinal had two layers of foam. One underfoot was really soft, and then one closer to the ground was really firm. The soft
Okay.
layer underfoot was almost so soft that it felt like you were just on a sponge, and like you just went straight to the firm layer. So I feel like weight wise, it probably wasn't too different. I think where a lot of the weight saved has got to be in this upper because, you're going to save a little bit in the midsole foam, but the originals and all upper was a pretty standard like mesh shoe upper. It was a pretty thick mesh. This upper, it's starting to get into the materials. I'm surprised they didn't just go like matrix, but this is almost even thinner material. Like it's a mesh, but it's like a full plastic mesh with what seemed to be great breathability and drainage. I didn't have any issues with like breathability or anything like that. It didn't stretch out. It's super lightweight, and then there's like a extra skeleton layer
Yep.
underneath the mesh to provide those extra spots of security and lockdown. And then they went knit on the tongue, going straight into the ankle collar. So it's just one piece. There's no padding on the tongue. It's just like a somewhat thicker piece of knit material. All in all, the upper is really simple. There's no plastic heel cup. Instead, it's just a couple layers of fabric laminated together, which gives it some stiffness. And then there's like just your ever so slight, like elastic. I don't know what is this like gator debris collar around the top of the shoe, which you know definitely I'm not going to say it was taken from the Solomon Pulsar, but it's like a similar design cue. The one thing I will say about this one versus the Solomon is that this is a lot easier to put on your foot. The
Yeah.
elastic stretches quite a bit more. The midsole, it's a compressed uh, EVA. So it starts out as a really giant block and they add some heat and they squeeze it until it becomes this size. But so that was one of my big areas of concern was the fact that this is just kind of like a standard EVA and it's pretty soft. Like I was pretty surprised right out of the box to feel how like soft and cushy it was. I was definitely concerned like how quickly would it take me to pack out this shoe in terms of the foam. No rock plate or any additional like underfoot protection in that regard. Hoka doesn't really do rock plates due to the thickness of their shoes. Whether this one could have used one is probably up for debate. The outsole is Vibram Mega Grip rubber on their light base, which and it's a new outsole pattern. It's a lug design or style that Hoka's never used before. I think it's the same depth lugs as the Tecton X. I believe this was like 3 or 4 millimeters. Yeah, I mean those are really all the materials of the shoe.
Slap a delight base.
Um, how many miles did you get in the shoe?
I went a little bit overboard, not quite as overboard as I did with the Speedland, but I put 117 miles on this shoe, all
Nice,
on trail. How about you?
right on. I hit 80 miles. 80 miles with a lot of vert. I'm kind of curious to go back and see what my actual stats for this 80 were, but just looking at like the last week and a bit, it's probably 80 miles and like in that 20 to 25,000 foot of climbing type range. Cause I was actually taking this shoe on
Yeah,
some
what kind of
really
vert is
steep.
what I was going to say.
It was like some pretty beefy vert, like a lot of hiking. A lot of hiking, a lot of steep descending. Nothing too technical. I just ran on a couple technical trails, and then I did one like more runnable 20 miler on the PCT last weekend where I did hit some mud just from the snow melt. I got to run across some snow patches, and then I also got to just get like some pretty cruiser miles in. So I think I did enough running in the shoe to kind of really learn one, like how long it's going to last, two, what I would use it for, and 3 if I like it. What did you think of the fit of this one?
I thought the fit was great. I liked the point you made about the ankle collar and just initial entry into the shoe. This was definitely another shoe that I fit into that category of like out of the box versatility and readiness. I think one of the very, I think the very first run I did in this shoe was a 3 hour, 20 plus mile trail long run. The fit was great. I know that you also talked earlier about a potential counterpart to the shoe, which is that Solomon Pulsar 2. We also have that shoe, you and I, in stock. I'm not sure if we're going to review it next month, but that is a much narrower counterpart to this shoe. And I do like that this has a wider toe box to it. And I think for me personally, that helps a ton with the fit. Other things I like about the fit, I mean, a lot of shoes, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but when you talk about breathability, it's common to see that more breathable material up near the forefoot. I like how much breathability there is on the sidewalls of this shoe too. Like I never overheated in this shoe, and that was a distinguishing feature for me.
Yeah, I think Hoka created a real winner with this upper. I was
And it's
pleasantly
simple.
surprised. Yeah, it's simple. It's it's funny. The only like negative that I would really say about it is when you hike in it, like you can kind of hear the fabric like crinkle a little bit. So like it sounds kind of like baggy and plasticky, but it doesn't feel that way at all. And the material's soft enough where sometimes like plasticky material uppers like this, the material folds into your foot and creates blisters and problems like that. This material is definitely soft enough where I didn't get any of those issues.
I want to ask you a question because I definitely have an opinion here, but do you feel like with these ankle collar like heel material, do you feel like this could act as a replacement to an actual gaiter that that a runner might use in a race where there's demands for that? Because like I know I ran a lot of trails in this shoe where a lot of dust on the trail, a lot of loose rock, a lot of twigs that could kick up and get into the shoe if they needed. But like this seemed to protect from a lot. So is it too crazy to say that like as we see this type of ankle collar become more popular, it can replace a lot of use cases for an actual gaiter?
I think so. I mean, I don't think there's that many use cases for gators. Like I think gators are more like in large overused a lot. I think there's definitely many scenarios where gators like should exist, but I think there's if there was that happy medium where you didn't need to be 5 inches above your ankle and wrap all the way around over your forefoot just so that way you weren't kicking stuff in right around the ankle collar of the shoe. If there was that happy medium, kind of like these knit ankle collars, I think that would check the box for most people's gator needs.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because like I don't like how stuffy my feet get in gaiters. I just yeah, it's just not my vibe, man. Yeah, I thought the fit was really nice. You know, it's not like I would say this is probably still teetering on that like race fit for Hoka. You know, like it's of the Hoka trail shoes, it's probably one of the narrower ones. But then when you compare it to, you know, the other like we've actually done 3 shoes in a row that kind of all compete with each other with the Nike, the Terra Kiger 9 and then the On
Yep.
Cloud Venture Peak 3. I would kind of say those are all loosely in a similar category. Um, I think this is perhaps the widest of the bunch, like this and the Kiger for sure. But I think this was probably the most stable, especially like under the arch, kind of like that midfoot stance and the heel. Um, this was definitely the widest of the 3 shoes, which yeah, it was nice to have you know that kind of extra stability. Lengthwise, I you know nothing to report there. It was a
True to
true to
size.
size for me,
Same.
which
Same.
is nice because I always hesitate sometimes when like you know shoe companies totally redo the shoe. Uh, Sometimes they totally jack up the sizing. Hoka did not, so like whatever your regular Hoka size is, just get that for these. So you got in quite a bit of running in the shoe. Uh, yeah, what were some of your you know highlights for like the feel and the ride of the shoe?
I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot more when we get into the details about the midsole, but this is clearly a racing shoe. It's Hoka's lightest shoe in their lineup, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of their athlete team popularizing this at short distance events, and we'll probably even. I would be actually curious to see how many times we see this on the live stream camera at Broken Arrow, for example. Like, what's going to be the go-to shoe at Broken Arrow, like the VK, for
Mm-hmm.
example, for Hoka athletes? I'd be very curious to see if we see this there. For me, this was an interesting shoe because it is definitely in the responsive category, but I still felt like there was just enough padding there for it to be a totally comfortable, reasonable ride if you want to take it on a multi-hour long run, for example. And one thing I did not do that I regret in reviewing the shoe is I did not run fast in the shoe. I never did any workouts in the shoe, never picked up the pace. I know you have some thoughts there, but I thought that like they nailed the trade-offs. Like there really is just enough padding, I think, in this shoe for it to feel comfortable and not your foot not to feel too fatigued after the fact. Like you're not like
Mm-hmm.
rehabbing your shoe for days on end after a long run in this shoe.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely still Hoka DNA like in this shoe. Even though it's super thin and really lightweight, like you put it on, it still kind of has a little bit of that Hoka squish to it, which I think partly is why it felt so good out of the box. Like you had said, you did like a 20-miler right out of the box. I did. I think it was like 16 miles with like 4,500 feet of climbing, first
Was
run
this
out of the box.
was this Pete's Punisher with the lane train?
No, that was the second run. That was the next day. Um, but the first day. So like I did a back-to-back long run in this shoe, and I was just amazed at like how invisible they felt on your foot. And like I do really like a shoe like that. Well, I like a shoe. I like the way those types of shoes feel, but they've never actually been great for my training. Like I always feel like I get hurt in shoes this light, or get too beat up. But like so far, it's actually been, stable enough and cushioned enough where I feel like I can put forth a pretty full training load on this shoe, and it actually hold up just fine. I will say I can already tell like the midsole foam, like the midsole foam is going to pack out somewhat earlier than other Hokas because there's like not as much of it and it's the same foam. Like if you cut a speed goat in half and you start running in it, you might only get 200 miles instead of 400 before it starts to feel flat. Like that's kind of how this shoe's going to feel, and like I can already tell it's going in that
You
direction. And
felt that?
yeah, and like that's usually how it works with a shoe that feels amazing right out of the box and has like no break-in period. It's like they already put 50 miles on the shoe before it shipped to me, so then it was like amazing. But then as a result, like the sunset years of this shoe are going to be a lot shorter.
That's an
um
underrated thing to, by the way, like notify like the audience of, is like analyzing the sunset years of a shoe. Like it's one thing for the field to be analyzed from 0 to 200, but like the 200 to 400 is probably very important for the mass market.
I always talk about like where the sweet spot of the shoe is. And like the longest lasting shoes, their sweet spot is usually like 100 to 400 miles. In the first 100 miles, it feels like a new shoe. It's kind of stiff, it breaks in. This was a shoe where I felt the sweet spot started right out of the box. And as a result, I feel like the sweet spot's probably from like miles 0 to 150. And then from like 150 to 250, or maybe even 150 to 300, it'll probably just feel like meh, but it'll work.
It's built to fool shoe reviewers.
Yeah, this is one of those shoe reviews where if you just did like 10 miles in it, you'd be like, this is the greatest shoe ever. But like, because we did like 80 and 120, it's still a really great shoe, but I can see like where, it being under 8 ounces is going to come into play a little bit. One thing I did find myself very fond of was Hoka's new outsole. Like it's just a new lug design, and I think it is fantastic. I had zero traction issues, both up and down. And I want to see this outsole pattern on more of their shoes. I think they need to put this outsole on the Hoka Tecton X. I think this outsole pattern is better than the Tecton.
This is where I think we're going to disagree significantly. And I was telling you this offline. I was very disappointed because I think, especially on hiking trails, Hoka decided to cut the lug pattern off significantly before the point of the toe. And I do tend to stand very steep on the forefoot of a shoe when I'm hiking up trail. And I appreciate having lugs there to dig in and get grip. And I did find significant slippage on anything above like 15% grade when I was in hiking motion. So that is my one complaint about the outsole.
You must have better toe strength than I do. Because like when I hike, I just like mostly push through the ball of my foot. Like I don't like use my toes at all. So I don't ever notice the lack of lugs. A thought that I did just have though is in our Mafate review, one of my biggest complaints was the full size lugs going all the way up to the toe because I would clip them on things. I didn't have a single issue tripping on anything in this shoe. Maybe because there are no lugs right up towards the toe. So like what one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Yes.
One spot on the upper that I don't know how to fix it, but like I didn't love was I felt that the heel being relatively floppy on more technical terrain where I started going like somewhat recklessly fast. Like if I'm going super casual, like 100-mile pace on technical terrain, it was fine. But if I was going like 50K or marathon race pace on technical terrain, my heel got a little squirrely in the shoe because it is a little bit wider than some of the other, short distance trail race shoes. And there was no like added plastic clip to keep my heel centered over the shoe. So I did feel
Okay.
the back half wiggling a little bit. And I think that's, you know, I have somewhat of a narrow heel. So for those who have like more moderate to wider heels, this is actually probably going to be very comfortable. Like I prefer like that Solomon heel or the On Cloud Venture Peak heel, which
Yep.
90% of people watching this review are going to be in the other camp where this is going to be the much better, more secure heel.
Yep. Agreed.
Do you have any durability concerns about the shoe? Like, do you think it's going to last like as long as a shoe this lightweight should?
I mean, other than what you said about just like the foam packing out earlier than you might want a shoe to do so if you're somebody that is on a budget of purchasing, 4 or 5 shoes a year and you're running 2,500 to 3,000 miles a year, as opposed to like how we have the luxury of doing things. There's that concern, but I am not really seeing any evidence of other durability issues. The upper is staying intact.
Yeah, your
Um,
upper is good.
Lug depth still looks great. Like I haven't seen too much shaving off the lugs.
Yeah,
Um,
mine are great. I mean, that's just the Vibram magic. It's just so good. Yeah, I was concerned that I
I've
would
only
like
actually had that issue with Michelin, by the way. It's just been that those Michelin lugs that I
the
had issue
Michelin
with on the
rubber was a
Speedlands, and
problem.
that was
Yeah.
it.
One of my A is starting to peel just a little bit. That's a testament to all the hiking that I was doing. Created like quite the pinch point there. So like what did Hoka design this shoe for? And it does it hold true. So I mean, it's called the Zinal. You know, we were
Yeah.
thinking, yeah, we'll do this in a whole nother episode, but shoes that are named after places and whether they're actually appropriate there, like the Nike Zagama, the Hoka Zinal, the normal Chirac. Is this a Sierra Zinal like race shoe? Or the Hoka athletes finally like, yes, we finally have a shoe to race Sierra Zinal in, or are they pulling something else out of the shoe quiver from Hoka?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, like you said, it's built for like the 5K to trail half marathon distance, maybe a trail marathon at its like farthest extent. But and maybe this is a good question for the audience too. A question for you here in the moment, like how with a shoe like the Zinal, and I think on the higher stack end, like the Mafate, those are kind of like deep cut type shoes in the Hoka line, in my opinion. Like people like you and I that geek out on this stuff, like we
Yeah, they're
love it
not
and,
the
we're excited
popular
to review it.
models.
But like, like, I guess my ultimate question for this whole review is like, how do you convince the average runner to pivot away from the Speed Goat or even the Tecton, which they're putting a lot of marketing dollars behind, to like purchase a shoe that's very specialized in this distance or in the further up distances, the Mafate? Like, and maybe you have a good answer for this, but like I'm scratching my head because like the Tecton X and the Speedgo are such like everyone I talk to is such a Swiss Army knife type shoe. Both are,
Yeah.
and I just don't know if you're going to get people that are like that care so much about specialization to make that pivot, because this is not a Swiss Army knife.
No. And maybe to your point that, Speed Goat wear, Tecton X wear isn't going to buy the shoe if they use the Speedgoat and the Tecton X for everything. If they have the Speedgoat and the Tecton X, they're probably also going to get the Zinal because they're clearly separating their two runs into the two different shoe models. I mean, I think if anything, this is an attempt to take some customers away from other brands.
Mm.
Like, this is a good barrier to entry Hoka if you've only been wearing Solomon. If you love Solomon shoes, there's never been a Hoka that's been worth exploring. But this Zinal could be.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, like, just if you're like any shoe company generally, what is the rationale for having like 10 shoes in your line versus like 6 or 4? And it sounds like part of the reason can be to capture market share.
Yeah, it's just options. And like, there's a lot of Hoka fans who will buy everything from Hoka that comes out. Um, and like, I think Hoka needs a shoe like this in their lineup. Like, even though it's not going to be one of their best sellers, um, that's my other question for the audience. Within the Hoka shoe lineup, this checks a lot of the same boxes as the Torrent, which
Yes.
is $30 cheaper. And last year, I would have said the Torrent 2 or the Torrent 3. 100% every situation that ever exists in the universe, I'm picking that over the Zinal 1. This Zinal 2 is such an improvement. I'm now struggling to find a reason why I would bust out the Torrent because I do think this is $30 better now than the Torrent
Yeah.
because it's got like a proper Vibram outsole that actually works. I love the old Zinal and the Torrent were almost identical weights. This one's now significantly lighter. This shoe feels faster and more nimble. And just like this Zinal, I'm not taking the Torrent on I'm not going to race 100-miler in this shoe.
In addition to being the lightest shoe, is this the most redesigned shoe from its previous model that we have reviewed?
It's definitely a pretty good size update from the ground up in terms of like new midsole foam, new upper material. The only material really that stayed the same between the first Zinal and this one is the Vibram light base, rubber. They just changed the whole outsole pattern, but like the material's the same. But like other than that, this is like a very different shoe. And I think it improved in all the best ways. Going back to what did this design, what the
Yeah,
shoe is
yeah,
designed for.
yeah.
On the Hoka website, it says, a quote, "A veritable paring knife for the trail."
Yeah.
What the hell does that mean?
I don't know, but it's compelling and it gets the crowd going.
It gets the people going. My lovely lady lumps. Like maybe they mean like they're like carving up the trail with the same accuracy that you would like use for a paring knife. Like, I don't know. I think what they're getting at is like the shoe's meant for fast running. And
Yeah.
which is interesting though, because I found myself enjoying the shoe on like the medium to like medium length long run days, like in that 2 to 4 hour range where the effort was pretty casual, but the vert was pretty high. I actually really liked like casually hiking steep climbs in this shoe and then being able to like nimbly descend, and it still had enough cushion even for like I did a 4 hour run last weekend, and like the last 30 minutes my feet were starting to get like a little tired, but they were
Yeah.
fine. I When I was at the Western States training camp week runs a couple weeks ago, I was sharing some miles with Casey Lichtag. She loves this shoe and she will be wearing it at Western States
Interesting.
because she's always opted for the slightly lighter weight shoes where you can just feel the ground. Like she had worn the Torrent previously because the first Zinal was trash. When she was running for Nike, it was the Nike Kiger. So now it's, Zinal 2 for her. So I know there's at least one person that's going to wear this for Western States. Would you race in it?
I totally would. Yes. In fact, I would definitely race a trail marathon in it and below. I might even do I would run like the Broken Arrow 46K in this shoe, I think, depending on the year, depending on snow coverage and stuff. Yeah. We're coming up on Broken Arrow week here.
I struggle to decide whether I would race in this shoe or not because it's pretty soft and there's no rock plate. And like for me, when I start getting reckless on descents, I wish I longed for a little bit more protection underfoot, which then has me nervous for like anything under 50K when I'm like tired and just needing to like bulldoze descents. Like I would wish for something a little bit more protective. And then on the other end, like if I'm going to go like above 50K, is the shoe have enough cushion where it would just hold up for like, because if we're going, above 50K, now we're looking like 5+ hour type runs. I don't
Yep.
know if my feet would be happy for 5+ hours in the shoe. So I kind of am in this zone of like, I loved training in it, like going 100-mile pace for 3 to 4 hours, which is like most of my long runs, but I wouldn't actually do the race in this shoe. So I ended up, I think as of right now, I actually don't think I would do a race in the shoe, but instead it just ended up being like one of the most fun
Yeah.
training shoes. And I think
Okay.
that's so even though I wouldn't race in it and Hoka like called it a race shoe, I think I'm definitely still keeping it in the shoe closet because I just like the way I feel in the shoe when I'm training. And who knows, maybe if I get enough training miles in the shoe, my feet will just toughen up a little bit and I can actually go do a longer race in it.
Couple just miscellaneous points I want to make on my end, and then I actually have a question for you about the outsole. Um, I love the rounded laces on this shoe. I know that that doesn't always
Yes.
make like the biggest difference, but I love the rounded laces versus your typical flat lace. Love that. And then I also think this is one of the sexiest colorways we've demoed in a while. The mustard yellow on navy blue with touches of orange. If you are a fan of the NHL, you know the Nashville Predators, like mid 2000s jerseys. This is like the Nashville Predator of shoes. I love it. But the question I had for you about the midsole or the outsole, sorry, Hoka is definitely doing a little bit of marketing around the quote unquote microtraction on the lugs. Can you either uh, back this up or dispel the perceived benefits of microtraction on these lugs, these little like feathery balls that are coming off the sides of the lugs?
Yeah, I'll do my best to try and capture uh, in a video what you are talking about with these micro nubs on these lugs. Eh, They're like ideas to like create more surface area on the lug. Um, I don't buy it. Like I think it's all marketing. Like there's no way that there's a noticeable amount of grip difference with this versus a flat lug. I don't know. I just don't buy it. I mean, maybe if we're we're getting to that point where we're eking out like tenths of a percent, uh, marginal gains. This out that outsole, these what'd you call them? Micro lugs, micro tractions.
Micro lugs, microtraction. Yeah, it was on the
Um,
Hoka website.
yeah, marginal gains. I think that's what it is.
Marginal
Marginal
gains.
gains doesn't hurt, but probably doesn't need to exist either. Um, okay, moving on to the last bit because we've been rambling about this shoe for a long time because we both clearly actually really like it. $160.
I thought it was 180.
I thought so too, but all the retailers are listing it for 160.
Oh, so it's the same price as the one then.
Yeah, it didn't go up in price.
Wow. Okay.
Um,
I might have to change my opinions here in a sec then.
yeah, 160. So, what was it? The on Cloud Venture Peak was 160, and then the S Lab Pulsar and Pulsar SG were 180. It kind of falls right into that like kind of upper mid range for like a short trail race shoe. I would buy this. I would buy this. Like I'm not going to train in it every single day, but like dude, I just had so much fun running in this shoe that like I don't care if it wears out at 250 miles. Like I like it. I like it and I like putting it on for training.
I am getting incredibly spoiled being a part of conversational pace, and I don't want to lose perspective on 2021 Finn, who had to buy every single shoe that he wore.
You put 9,000 miles on each
I
pair.
need to think in terms of the sunset years of a shoe, and as much as I love this shoe, as much as this is one of my favorite shoes that we have reviewed to date, I think you made an excellent point earlier about factoring in the sunset years of this shoe and what running 400 miles on this shoe looks like and the state of the shoe, where the breakdown is. And I do have concerns about breakdown like after mile 150.
Yeah.
And if I'm not a shoe reviewer, purchasing this shoe scares me. And I don't see myself departing from like a Tecton X2 or the Speed Goat.
Yeah. I'm getting all of them. Actually, okay, I won't use the classic pick one phrase. Tecton X, Speed Goat, Zinal. You got to pick two.
I thought you were going to do a different
Yeah, I know
comparison
what you
thing.
thought I was going to do. You
Sorry.
have to
So
Speed Goat,
say
Tecton X, Zinal 2. You got to pick two that get to live in the closet. You got to toss one. Which one are you tossing?
tossing the Goat, and I'm taking the Tecton X2 and the Zinal.
Oh, I'm
And then if I have to toss of those two, I'm taking the Tecton X2.
I'm tossing the Tecton X2 and I'm keeping the Speed Goat and the Zinal.
Okay.
Which I don't know. Yeah, maybe we'll have to comment that and pin it to the top of
That's a great question.
like which one are you tossing between the three? Maybe that's the question that we'll leave out there for the audience. But for those who stuck around this long, thanks for listening or watching the Hoka Zinal 2. Be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if you do want to try out this shoe, feel free to use our link in the show notes below to get this Hoka Zinal 2 from our friends at Running Warehouse. Your purchase helps support the channel and it allows us to continue to do shoe reviews like this and talk about shoes. Finn, I will see you in just a few days. We're going to go hang out in Tahoe for a week.
Yes. For if you're watching this video before June 15th, Brett and I are a few days removed from
No one will watch
wall-to-wall
this
live
video
coverage.
before June 15th.
Never mind. Sorry. You know what? The live coverage is complete. We've already done it, and
yeah, it was amazing.
We're theoretically alive. It was amazing.
Cool.